Second dark trinity, Ishtar. She's the wife and lover of Baal. Ishtar was so important among the gods of ancient Middle East that she was given the title Queen of Heaven. She is associated with the stars, moon, and Venus. She is the goddess of sexuality. Venus is associated with love. She was also the goddess of war and destruction. She's known for her fury, impulsive, greedy, emotional, demanding, stormy, fierce, carnal, given to rage, romantic, vindictive, full of unbridled passion and sexual desire, with a boundless amount of pride. If she is denied the object of her desires, or if she's offended, she will become vengeful and violent and will wreak havoc and destruction. Ishtar is the breaker of rules. She is the trespasser of boundaries and the transgressor of standards and conventions. She will demand that which belongs to others. She's the goddess of prostitution. She is a seducer, a tempter, the goddess of who captivates, allures, and snatches away. Her idols are often naked, as of a woman revealing herself. She often appears next to her symbols, the moon or the crescent moon, the sun, or her star. They are associated with the planet Venus. Ishtar is often depicted in her function as goddess of war. She is carrying weapons and entering combat, riding a lion. She appears with her depictions as symbols of her ferociousness and power. Ishtar is the patron goddess of the tavern or alehouses. She is associated with the partaking of alcohol, particularly of beer. She dwells in the taverns and mixes sexuality with intoxication. I will come back to this description of her in just a little bit. It's important of how she entered America through the tavern. Ishtar is a sorceress, a goddess of magic and spells. Her cult that follows her is reflected in her nature. Her worship is saturated with carnality, sensuality, and open sexuality. Her temples are akin to houses of prostitution. From the practice of sex acts in her temple come the concepts of sacred sex, temple prostitution, cult prostitution, and sacred prostitution. According to a Greek historian, the women of Babylonia were compelled by religious customs to sit in the temples of the goddess and perform the function of prostitutes, having relations with a stranger in exchange for money. Every woman of the land was compelled to perform the act at least once in her lifetime. Ishtar goes by many names in the Bible. She can modify her appearance to adapt to new people, cultures, and land. As with Baal, she's everywhere. She manifests in different forms in different cities, regions, and lands. In Canaanite mythology, she's connected to Baal and appears often as his wife or lover. In the book of Judges, 1 Samuel, and 1 and 2 Kings, they speak of the two gods. The removal of Ishtar. When the Christian faith entered the Roman and Middle Eastern world, the goddess and her spirits were cast out. The covenant of marriage was taught to be sacred and sexuality as a gift. The carnal desire and unbridled sexuality could not be maintained, so the goddess went into exile. She will return when the people turn away from the one true God of heaven and earth, and she has done that in America now. Shortly after America started turning away from God in the 1960s, Ishtar entered with a sexual revolution. It was a revolution that replaced our biblical sexual ethics, our ideas, and morality with pagan rituals and beliefs. The goal of the goddess was to destroy morality and practices regarding sexuality and marriage. She started casting her spells. She specialized in love magic, enchantments, and conjured desires that altered one's affection and behavior. She seized and possessed her worshippers. Her spirit moved and spoke through the ones that served her. They were her vessels. Before Ishtar came to America. Before Ishtar's entrance into America, sexuality was seen as a lifelong covenant between husband and wife. It was in the sacred domain of marriage. Sex outside of marriage was seen as a sin. Divorce was frowned upon. If a woman became pregnant before marriage, she and the child's father were expected to marry. Prostitution existed, but was illegal and confined to the underworld. Pornography was taboo and kept out of the mainstream culture and public view. The entertainment world was expected to uphold the same values and morals that was based on the Bible. Sexual relations was only an illusion or a suggestion and not depicted on the movie screen or television. Nudity of any kind was forbidden. Any illusion of sex outside of marriage was not to be portrayed in a positive light. You did not hear bad language in music or entertainment. Then Ishtar comes to America. When Ishtar came to America, everything changed, and sex became a god. Sex was pursued without regard to marriage, love, or even a relationship. As sexuality was glorified, the marriage was eroded. Divorce became an epidemic, and America was filled with broken homes. Ishtar is led by her own will and desire. Ishtar has no regard for the consequences of her actions. She seeks immediate fulfillment of every impulse. She is the goddess of instant gratification. Ishtar's nature is to choose sexual pleasure and romance over commitment. People sleep with each other, live with each other, but will not commit to each other. The number of Americans living together without marriage and the number of children born out of wedlock or without fathers has skyrocketed. What was once fornication now became premarital relations and in time the norm. People are obsessed with sex. Sex sells everything on the market. The realms of entertainment and popular culture are subject to the same spirit. What was forbidden is now in the movies and television. Whereas the television industry once avoided people in bed, now it regularly portrays unmarried people in bed and having sex with multiple partners. Nudity was once never seen in public and is now displayed in movies and in our living rooms through the television. My grandparents would not be able to believe their eyes on how the world has changed. They would have been so embarrassed about the content of what we see every day on television. It is such a shame that my grandchildren see us watching with them this today. Even the cartoons are not good to watch. I grew up watching Lucy and Mayberry. They were funny and entertaining. You did not see sex and dirty language. I long for that time for my grandchildren. The spirit of transgression to the taboo. Ishtar's nature is to trespass boundaries, transgress convention, and break taboos. What was once taboo has become a source of pleasure. It is the pleasure of defilement and desecration. She has introduced and championed sexual immorality. She has sanctified it and declared it holy. Sexual morality is now accepted and treated as sacred. Ishtar has taken what was forbidden, unspoken, and taboo and introduced it into the mainstream culture. The shock of each step was followed by familiarity and numbness, then toleration, then acceptance, and then celebrating. She is altering life itself. Sex sales. Ishtar is the sacred prostitute. She takes prostitution into the larger culture, into the marketplace, into the realm of trade and commerce. She converts sex into a commodity to be bought and sold. Sex will be a means of procuring money on the movie and television screens, in videos and magazines, and on the internet. Industries had existed in the shadows in American life, but now it has overtaken in broad daylight. Adult magazines, adult clubs, adult movies, adult entertainment has increased in numbers and influence. The terminology is erotic literature, erotic dancers, erotic massages, erotic movies. The word erotic comes from the word eros. Eros was the ancient god of the Greeks. The name means desire. Eros was the god of sexual desire and love. Eros was born of Aphrodite. Aphrodite was the Greek incarnation of Ishtar. The image of Ishtar is a naked woman. Her image in modern day is pornography. The oldest writings in world history are the sacred hymns of Ishtar, or another name Inanna, in which she is described as a prostitute. The Greek words of writings is graftos. The Greek word of Ishtar's profession, prostitution, is porna. It is from this root, writings about prostitutes, we get the word pornography. Americans no longer must go into the shadows of the red light district of America's cities. Our whole culture is now the red light district. America is the world's leading creator and exporter of pornography. We are the porn capital of the world. Ishtar's great seduction. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, fortune-telling and witchcraft, intoxication, New Age movements, and the world of occult have all went back to the enchantments of the Macedonian goddess Ishtar. She casts spells and magic and causes her followers to abandon reason and rationality to do what they otherwise would never have done. In the midst of Ishtar, she schemes and takes away the powers and blueprints of civilization contained in the tablets of the god Inca. She partakes with him in alcoholic beverages until he becomes intoxicated, at which point she takes off with the tablets. Ishtar has the powers of seduction and intoxication. This will parallel with the usage of intoxicating substances in America. 1960s drug culture. The 1960s are defined as the birth of the drug culture. The psychedelic or mind-altering drugs that radically altered perception, thinking, and behavior were celebrated and embraced as the new intoxicating substances. They were glorified and sought after. It was the goddess's power and will to alter consciousness, perception, and reality. She used sexuality, intoxicating substances, and music. In 1969, Life magazine article identified the three elements as the counterculture's new sacraments: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. The revival of the occult. The spiritual void left in God's absence drew millions into dark spirituality. There was a massive revival of the occult. It brought the occult beliefs and practices into the mainstream of America. Ishtar has the power of magic. She's the god of mediums, those who were said to be possessed of spirits. They spoke for the gods and revealed supernatural knowledge and counsel. Her spirit possessed them, as it did her prophets. Ishtar is a medium, the mediator between the gods and the mortals. Today, such mediums are known as fortune tellers, psychics, and channelers of the occult. She can redirect or inflame a person's sexual desires or romantic affections. Out of the occult revival came an explosion in the practice of witchcraft, as well as the number of women identifying as witches. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. The next podcast that I do will be Witches Are Real. Please give me a like or comment and share with others.